I can't believe I won.
And you still got people out there with double masks and face shields and shit. Look into it.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
Welcome to another episode of Look Into It. Tonight, no childhood stories from me, no Kiss stories, no Wasp, no Queensryche. We're going to get right back into conspiracy theories today, and we're going to go deep and dark. But like I've said before in previous episodes, every episode is going to be different, man. We're going to have a football fucking episode eventually. We're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns and all that shit. So I'm going to let you know right off the top. I'm going to let you know right off the top whether you should just turn this motherfucker off and just, you want conspiracy theories every episode. I get it. Tinfoil Hat got all kind of fucking conspiracy theory episodes. Every Conspiracy Social Club, fucking Union of the Unwanted, all that shit on Rokfin. You don't need me. You don't need me. Sometimes I'm going to tell some childhood stories. Some people like it, some people don't. But today, you're in luck. We're going to get fucking deep. My guest today is the author of Esoteric Hollywood, books 1 and 2, the one, the only Jay Dyer. Jay, how you doing?
What's up, dude? It's kind of surreal, man. It's crazy to be on here. I've watched a lot of your podcasts, so I'm really happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me. Hey,
dude, thank you for doing it, man. And also joining us is my brother from another mother. He's the reason I'm even doing stand-up comedy right now. You know, I used to do stand-up comedy before 10th Planet. I was working as a writer on the Man Show for Comedy Central. Fucking hated it. Couldn't wait to get the fuck out of Hollywood. I hated it first day on the job. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? And I ran away from that shit as soon as I tapped Hoyler in Abu Dhabi. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do jujitsu. Fuck this comedy shit. So I just ran away from comedy. And but I never stopped writing. Never stopped putting ideas down together. I said, one day I'm going to go back and do some stand-up one day. And then year after year after year, I never went back up. And then Sam, who I knew from the old days when I used to hang out with Joe at the Comedy Store back in 2000, 2001, 2002, Sam, he said, hey, dude, if you ever want to do comedy again, I'll put you on my show. He was doing Tuesday nights at the Comedy Store, Comedy Chaos. And I was like, damn, I don't know. It's been so fucking long. I don't know. And Sam was fucking pushing me. And I said, okay, fuck it. I'll try it once. And I went back up, man. And I haven't looked back. And me and Sam been on the road doing tinfoil hat comedy shows all over the country. We got Tallahassee coming up. June like 17th or 18th, something like that. And then Jacksonville the next day. So we're doing Tallahassee and Jacksonville back to back. My brother from another mother, here he is, Sam Tripoli. How you doing, Sam?
Brother, how are you? I'm so excited to be on your new podcast, dude.
Hey, man. And the reason why I'm having you on, not only because I love you, but when we're on the road and we're like, in Ubers and we're, at the airport, we're always talking about the same shit. Like which move, like what, we just pick a movie and we're like, okay, what is the Illuminati purpose of this movie? Because it's pretty fucking obvious now.
Yeah.
It all like gigantic movies have some kind of deep state purpose.
Right.
And I always talk about like, for sure, the zombie genre. Zombies are so huge. Zombies are huge. And it's so obvious what the zombie genre is for. It's to push the threat of contagion, the fear of contagion. Ooh, it's going to spread. And it's like the worst possible thing you can get. Being a zombie is worse than getting fucking leprosy. It's worse than getting fucking herpes on your fucking face. Yeah, being a zombie is the worst. So they get the worst shit.
Do zombies get STDs? That's a real question, bro.
What's worse than
a zombie get a gonorrhea and shit?
Dude, zombies are worse than being dead. It's better to get some disease and die than to get some disease in your
100%. It's always about some like bio lab that loses it and everybody goes nuts. It's
and
like,
then everybody needs the vaccine. Oh, yeah. We got to get the vaccine. It's all about the vaccine. And it's in like a green vial. And then, the vaccine's going to save everybody.
Some dude gets out and bites everybody. For sure. You know what's so interesting is like when you look back at a lot of the movies, they were just more clever at how they got it out. Now it's just like either the writers are shitty or something, and it's just so much more blatant now. It's like, it's so obvious what they're doing. Back then, like you look at, you're like, oh my God, that's what they were doing. We just weren't looking for it, and they were more clever at how they got the propaganda out. Am I wrong, Jay? It seemed like they were a little more and I think that's the opposite of comedy now, right? Like comedy now, you have to get real clever with how you say some fucking, politically incorrect shit. Whereas before you could come out and just say, now you got to say it in a way where they don't know if you're being offended. Like we talk about all the time, Eddie, when we're on the road, we have certain jokes where like, I know what you're saying there. And it's really clever because they can't get mad at you for saying it. It's all mindfuck shit. But in movies, it was the opposite way. It's like they said the same shit, but it was like super duper intelligent how they gave it away, not to arise all the crazy right-wing Christians. And now it just seems like they're either lazy or they just don't care, and they're just hitting you with blatant stuff. I don't know. Is that how you see it, Jay?
Some of that for sure. I mean, like if you think back to the 60s, the 50s and 60s, like they had a whole studio, right, that was like 250 of the top directors and producers with secret access that nobody knew about until, Dave McGowan started putting out his material, the Laurel Canyon stuff. And the weird part about that was that the top directors out there, Disney, you had people like the top actors of the time, Jimmy Stewart, like they had access to Laurel Canyon Studios, and nobody even knows the thousands of productions that they made. There's a couple things on YouTube that have been kind of declassified as public domain now, which demonstrates that this is all true. And you can see clips of like Jimmy Stewart up there, filming movies for the FBI and whatnot. But what that shows is that like even back to that time, like the 50s and 60s, there was a totally, intimate married at the hip relationship between the Pentagon, the CIA, the intelligence agencies and whatnot, and Hollywood. And it's always been that way to the point of like some of the biggest directors, A-listers did spying on the side. A lot of people don't know that, but like John Ford, Greta Garbo, Sterling Hayden, Christopher Lee, Julia Child worked for the OSS. Cary Grant was a spy.
Dude.
Yeah, Marlene Dietrich, Frank Sinatra was like a FBI informant and a CIA go-between. So all these people were doing their, stage stuff, their Hollywood stuff, and they're also basically, tied at the hip to the intelligence agencies. So, I mean, when I was doing grad work on this, I thought that shit was crazy. I was like, that's too out there. But then you realize when you get deeper and deeper into this even just at an academic level, not a conspiracy level, but like the actual academic research backs up the craziest shit about this stuff. Like, and more comes out over time. Like, people's biographies come out after they pass away. And, oh yeah, by the way, they were a spy for the CIA and they were sleeping with everybody and compromising them. I mean, it gets into that level, eyes wide shut level shit too.
Now, Jay, let's back up a little bit. Can you, and take your time with this, give me, I am fascinated with this, with people's stories of how they opened their eyes and how they became awake. Because I mean, how old were you when you were still caught in the Matrix? And what was it that opened your first eye, and then the second eye, then the third eye? What was the process?
I had a few wild experiences. I mean, I was a crazy, wild party dude in high school. I was just telling Sam the other day, I was like the wittiest superlative dude. And then we were partying one night and I had a really bad acid trip. And I had a sort of out of body experience where I interacted with this entity. I look back on it now and I think it was probably something, demonic, but that really shook me up. It kind of jolted my world. And that got me into philosophy, asking bigger questions, reading the Bible, that kind of stuff, reading about some conspiracy stuff. I was first exposed to that when I was about 18 or 19. A lot of stuff to do with Freemasons and the United Nations and communist conspiracies, that kind of stuff. So I got introduced to that a couple of years later after 9/11. I remember watching Burmes's documentary. Loose Change had come out, and then I was first exposed. Remember E-Bombs World, right?
Yes,
Remember that old ass site where
yeah, with all the crazy shit, right?
all that crazy shit, right? Like 2 chicks, 1 cup, or whatever that shit was. And then I remember Burmes's a clip from Loose Change popped up, and I was like on break at work, scrolling through that kind of stuff, and I was like, this is pretty crazy. Like that plane doesn't fit that hole in the building on the Pentagon, right? So something is up with that. And around that same time, I remember stumbling across some really weird fringe website, and they had a bunch of Alex Jones clips. And it was Alex when he was still on public access in Austin. He was talking about Skull and Bones in Bohemian Grove. And I'd never seen Alex Jones before, but I was watching these little like Windows Media clip, that like takes like 5 seconds or 5 minutes for it to pop up and start playing. And then here's Alex Jones, like young Alex Jones.
Struggle was real.
Yeah, dude. They're doing it. They're at Bohemian Grove, folks. The Skull and Bones. And I was like, what is this shit? So I started reading about Skull and Bones. I read about Skull and Bones. I read about Bohemian Grove. Anytime I would hear a book mentioned, I would buy it. I'm a book fiend. My mom was an editor and a librarian, so I grew up just surrounded by books. So then it was a longer sort of rabbit hole of the 9/11 stuff that led me into reading about secret societies. That led me into when I went to college, I decided I was going to study either film and philosophy or both of them together. And so I did that. And I had a lot of film classes on like Oliver Stone movies, and a lot of Oliver Stone shit's obviously super conspiratorial. So we got deep into that and comparing it to the real historical events and where it was on, where it was off. Kept listening to Alex consistently. Like I was like a hardcore Alex Jones listener from 2003 on. Like I would download, like every podcast back in the day. And he was back then, like he was talking about stuff that you'd never heard of. Like he was talking about false flags. He was talking about how intelligence agencies would co-opt people and just throwing out all this like really pretty high level stuff for the quality of the content that was out there back in 2000. Remember the Google video days? Like you'd be scrolling through Google video and they would have like lectures of crazy conspiracy theorists. So I went into all that. But I wanted to do it at an academic level. So I did my grad work on Ian Fleming, James Bond, and how all of that ties into him writing into his Bond stories, not just propaganda, but a lot of techniques of psyops, a lot of real operations that he was involved in. Because a lot of people don't know that he was a real life spy that did a lot of stuff during World War II.
The guy that wrote James Bond, the guy who wrote it, did he direct it too, or did he just write it?
No, he just wrote the stories, and then but Hollywood came to him and they were like, we could make this into like it could be the first iconic kind of franchise that would be used for propaganda. So, I mean, there were movies that had been made that were propaganda way before that, like back in the 20s and 30s. They were already using Hollywood for propaganda purposes. Like Howard Hughes's films were war propaganda films, but they really upped the game with Bond, because what Bond was like the next level of psyops through Hollywood. And it was the first time they really did that on a global scale, pushing a specific narrative that the establishment wanted. So that's kind of what it
was. It just glorifying
intelligence. They're everywhere. They can't stop you. So a long time ago, I used to do USOs. I've told the story before, but I think it fits here. Like I went with Brian Callen, Dov Davidoff, and Steve Byrne to Afghanistan. And we had this really great lead. This guy who was like retired military and was working through the USOs. And he was telling me a story that that in World War I think it was, that they had done studies and found that soldiers couldn't shoot the enemy. They wouldn't do it. They felt bad. They didn't want to do it. So they decided to start putting gun deaths in, like gunshot and people shooting and killing people in the movies, to normalize shooting and killing people in movies.
Sam Tripoli and I are coming to your town. Catch us on the road doing tinfoil hat comedy. Follow me on Instagram at tinfoil hat comedy night. June 17th, we got Tallahassee, and June 18th, Jacksonville. Go to samtripoli.com for more information and to buy your tickets. See you on the road.
Fast forward to, what happened with a gangster rap and hip hop and that famous meeting that nobody knows if it's real or not, about how like all the record execs got herded into a room and told that their companies are owned by the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex, and they're going to start pushing gangster rap to glorify this lifestyle, which lo and behold totally happens. You hear old rappers talking about how the clubs went from fist fighting to gunshots real quick. So I believe all of that.
So Jay, when you're talking about World War I and World War II propaganda in film, what was the main strategy? Is it what Sam's saying, just to get people used to people shooting other people in war, or what do you got to say about
There was a whole bunch of things. So that they for decades, the military and intelligence apparatus was experimenting at different levels in different ways. So one level, like there's the product placement, which everybody knows about that, right? That's the most obvious version of this that we can see, where the Bond franchise, for example, was one of the first to really start pushing certain brands in the movies. And they did it as an experiment to see how well it would work. And so when James Bond is pushing, this kind of drink, he's drinking this martini, all of a sudden everybody wants to drink that. All of a sudden everybody wants an Aston Martin, the car he drives. So that was very successful. And they realized that it could be used at a more sophisticated level for messages and ideologies. So they could put into the narratives. For example, I think that the Bond movies, they seed the idea of the war on terror decades before there was any war on terror. And they had planned, the deep state had planned that there would be, after the Cold War, a war on terror. And that was really put into practice in Vietnam. There's a really good book on this by Douglas Valentine called The Phoenix Program, where he goes into how they tested a lot of these psyops in Vietnam that would later be rolled out on a global level with the war on terror. That was the whole thesis of his book, is that Vietnam was an experiment in rolling out what would be the police state and the FEMA fusion centers and all that kind of stuff. That again was pioneered in Vietnam. And so it's the same apparatus that was running that fake controlled opposition war. And it's the same apparatus in the Cold War, in my view, that was doing a lot of high level. I'm not saying the Cold War wasn't real. Like, it was real people out there on the ground, engaging in these espionage activities and whatnot. But at a higher level, you have a plan to utilize these things for long-term purposes. So what they started doing with film was all kinds of experiments to see what, if you could change people's views of morality, if you could change people's views of, like Sam said, how to dehumanize an opponent or an enemy, which they had already experimented with that decades before. There was H.G. Wells, the famous sci-fi writer, he was the first big propagandist to figure out how to demonize an enemy through artwork and posters. So he would everybody from Eurasia, he would demonize them as this mongrel. And it was very successful in the poster campaigns. And then Bernays, the father of propaganda, borrowed a lot of those techniques from H.G. Wells and his science fiction. And Hollywood was doing the same thing at the same time. So basically, it's not just Hollywood, but media itself is actually a product of the OSS and wartime intelligence, and how they would use a lot of techniques, for example, out of advertising. So a lot of the admin that came from military intelligence and the OSS, they immediately went to be the heads of the networks, the CBS, ABC, NBC. They were all staffed by people that were like psyops masters in the time of World War II. So there's a whole bunch of different examples and phases of this. But if you want a World War II example, Hitchcock he shot tons of propaganda film for the British Ministry of Information, which was another office of basically psyops and intelligence. for war propaganda. So everybody knows who Alfred Hitchcock is, but not many people know that he was doing war propaganda. They also studied the techniques of how people reacted to Psycho when Norman Bates, like they didn't even show it, but it was enough at that time when he was like stabbing people that people were running out of the theater, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tame movie by today's standards, but they were studying the effects of that kind of stuff, the trauma on audiences when they see that kind of stuff. So there's so many different levels and layers to what the social engineers and the psyops experts have seen the potential for movies in Hollywood to do.
We're seeing that in China right now in real time, from what their TikTok shows, their population to their and like basically wiping up feminine men off of all their pop culture, to their movies now. The bad guys are Americans. The one they get away with the Chinese people have to, stop the bad guys. And the bad guys are Americans. And we see it happening in real time. And, when people talk about Chinese credit score, that's not a Chinese thing. They didn't invent that. It was actually U.S. intelligence that was brought over there to work out the kinks. And then now that it's got something, they're going to try to bring it over here to the best of their abilities.
When I hear that it was an American experiment conducted in China, it makes me feel like there's a little more hope, right? It's
or
a
makes you proud. Go, man.
Right? Like I'm like they're testing it. They're not sure about it. Thank God, because they do a lot of shit. They pull the plug on a lot of shit where they go with it for a week and then they go, you know what? Bad idea. Boom. Remember flu Rona? Remember flu fucking Rona? That lasted for a week.
Rona.
Like, because they knew, because once they admitted the CDC, the WHO, FDA, once they admitted that the fucking test we've been using this whole goddamn time can't tell the difference between the flu and fucking COVID. And it turns out that same test was always a flu test. When they finally admitted that shit, they knew that the flu numbers were going to come back and they were going to have to somehow bring the flu back, but slowly. You can't just switch it over. So someone in the deep state go, you know what? I think a good idea would be flu Rona. We'll just say it's a combo of both for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And
well,
they
like to see what they can get away with.
They pushed it.
Yeah.
And then I bet fucking Klaus Schwab fucking blew a fuse and said, who the fuck is going with flu Rona? Because everybody laughed immediately. Everybody go, what? Flu Rona? That gave the
flu Rona is a Sharknado
so
of diseases.
Yeah, right.
They pulled the fucking plug on flu Rona. I bet the guy that pushed that didn't clear it with Klaus Schwab first, I bet that guy's probably fucking, he got some cement shoes on in the fucking Bermuda Triangle or some shit. That guy's done, dude.
They took back his island.
Oh, yeah, he had to give back his island. That guy's gone.
No, I think Sam's right. Like I think sometimes they come up with the most retarded possible idea and they see if they can get away with it, right? Like throw that one out and see if they'll buy that shit, right?
They're just seeing how far we can go, and it's all based on this data points off your phone. That's why they went into Philadelphia first and tried to bring back masks, because the data showed that I hate to say it, Philly, because I love you, but you're in your weak men make hard times phase. And they knew that. So they're like, let's try to bring back masks here. And it failed miserably.
Yeah, that failed big time.
Big time, dude. Big time. And they keep trying to do it. Well, I was thinking about you today, Eddie, when I was at the park with my kids. And I looked around and it was so funny because it was like 180 from like 2 years ago, where like I looked around and there was a couple people with masks on and most people didn't have masks on. Like 2 years ago, everybody had masks on. A couple people didn't have masks on. It's like this weird kind of flip that's happened.
Yeah.
That is almost like, are we in a bizarro timeline right now? Because it's so completely different. And I just want to interview people like, why are you still wearing the mask? Like, what is keeping that mask on? But I thought it was really like the indoctrination is so strong right now.
It's strong as hell. And they've been doing masks and they've been doing little mini pandemics in Asia forever. Yeah. That's what they do. They do pandemics all the goddamn time. When I'd go to Asia, I'd see dudes with masks all the goddamn time. They always had masks. They got that culture down with the mask.
Right.
So you see them here in the United States. A good percentage of the people still wearing masks in the United States are Asians because that's their culture.
Right.
They got them good. now let me ask you I'm gonna have random questions coming out, but what do you think? What was the purpose of the Little Rascals? that couldn't be that had to have
remember
a purpose,
the Little
right?
Rascals.
Think about Little Rascals, even if you never thought about it before, off the top of your head.
Little Rascals, bro.
I'm trying to think,
Deep State. Give me Deep State, Little Rascals.
The Deep State purpose for buckwheat, right? I don't know, man. I mean, you threw me for a loop there.
With that, any kind of child trafficking type thing with Little Rascals?
Okay, we can
If
go
you
with that.
think about it, no,
Yep.
maybe bunch of kids weren't they?
Are they
were
like
orphans?
They're like orphans. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
that.
it's normalizing orphans, making orphans cool. It's okay to be an orphan. These kids didn't have parents, right? Little Rascals didn't. I'm just thinking of this shit right now.
Okay.
It could be normalizing orphans.
Well, I think back then, like the abuse in Hollywood was just as prevalent as it is now, but people didn't have any way to express that. There was no recourse, right? So
some shit happened to Shirley Temple.
Exactly. I was gonna say Shirley Temple.
Way it did.
Darla, whew, she was probably on drugs at 12.
Well, they said that Judy Garland, right? They always talk about how she was like drugged up and she just basically had to live on set, right? She couldn't leave the set, controlled by her handlers. There's a movie that kind of hints at this, not with her, but just in general, that Coen Brothers movie, Hail Caesar. I think if you remember the Josh Brolin character, he's like the fixer. So he like keeps everybody in line and covers up, the murders, and he does all that kind of shit. Like organized crime would play that role for a lot of people in Hollywood. And organized crime has a lot of, tie-ins to CIA and all that stuff too in the history of Hollywood. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some crazy shit going on.
The thing about this is I just want to say real quick, Eddie, I don't know if when the Little Rascals were going, if the system was implemented as much, because I think everything changes when Kennedy gets shot. And, that's when the CIA that's when the Dulles brothers bring in over the Nazis. That's when we start seeing the propaganda. That's when we see the Bush takeover and the Bush death cult start to seep everywhere. So I'm not saying there wasn't propaganda way back in the day, but I just don't know if it was the same organization that has got everything on lockdown right now, right?
I don't know shit. I wasn't back there, but to me, it seems like TV and the movie industry was made to propagandize. I don't think it was just some organic thing like some filmmakers making movies and then it later got hijacked. I think when it comes to TV and movies, I think, and I could be totally wrong, I just come to the conclusion based on what I know, gun to my head, I would say TV was created to propagandize. Movies were created, the movie business was from day one. This is how we're going to get them. We're going to get them all in a little room and we're going to just show a screen. I don't know. I'm sure World War. Think about the Reefer Madness propaganda with weed. That was in the 30s. And that was straight up just the craziest propaganda. The most blatant, like they would show, like there was silent films that demonized weed. Like they would have someone smoking weed in the silent film and then like bust out guns, start shooting people and shit. So that was in the 30s. So I think from day one, it's been under control. That's I think the Three Stooges, I got to think about that. What is the deep state purpose behind Three Stooges? There's got to be something, right?
Is it possible that I'm totally not going against what you're saying right now, but is it possible that the needs of the state were different at that time? If you're trying to build up America into a national, international power? Don't you kind of want them to be doing certain things compared to now, which is like trying to destroy that same power? I'm just thinking out loud here that, like, because if we're like, what is the deep state of Welcome Back Carter? I like
dude, I bet you there is, dog. Don't laugh
what
at
is
that.
it, dude? I don't like, is there something like, what is it? Sweat hogs or farm animals? I don't know, dude. It's like, what's the weirdness? So, I mean, anything's possible, dude.
Those guys was that high school? Was Welcome Back Carter high school?
Yeah,
those guys are like 35.
Yeah, dude. Oh, yeah. You remember
Jay, what do you think? When do you think the propaganda really started to hit in Hollywood?
So I think both of you guys are right to a degree, because there are some of the earliest film footage was intended for like military propaganda purposes. Some of the earliest blockbusters from the 20s were war propaganda, like Hell's Angels by the Howard Hughes film. So they saw the potential for that early on. Of course, Hitler himself also utilized movies and film for a lot of propaganda back in the 30s, 40s. And then by the time of World War II, it ramped up to the next level where they were playing propaganda reels before every movie, right? So, and then at the same time, there was a huge interplay that, like, new information about this, like, is still coming out. Like the field of academics analyzing the history of Hollywood and propaganda, it's actually fairly new, like in terms of academic people writing about it. There's not that many books out there about it. And so the people are discovering new relationships that nobody even knew about. That's why when, Dave McGowan was talking about Laurel Canyon, that was such a big revelation. I was already almost done with my book when I read Dave's book. I had to go back and like add that to the first chapter because it was so relevant to what I was writing about in Esoteric Hollywood. But it ramps up. And then when you get those people coming out of the wartime intelligence apparatus and then being the heads of the networks, when they came out with the networks, that was a huge, like, next level of propaganda. And then the Cold War, again, is like took it to the next level. So Hollywood just kind of kept going more and more and more into the domain of propaganda. And yeah, after JFK, for sure, like, it ramped up because that took the Cold War to the next level, because people thought that was Oswald, which obviously it wasn't, but it was blamed on a Soviet, right? It was blamed on a communist, supposedly, to feed into the Cold War narrative. All the Bond films, for the most part, take place during a Cold War narrative. All of that was pushing Cold War stuff. And it was also pushing the ideology of the West. Like, James Bond is supposed to be the preeminent icon of, like, the Western dude that he's just a killing machine with no morals at all. And he's a pure consumerist. That's why he's all obsessed with the best watch, the best car, the best women. But he has no heart, no feeling at all. And that's what Western ideology wanted to project against the Soviet idea of communism, collectivism. I'm not saying either one, or they're both bad in my view. Like, they're both extremes that were being used as a dialectical controlled opposition. But James Bond is the icon of the Western Nietzschean Übermensch, beyond good and evil, killing machine, right? But then the irony is that in the novels, like, he's a miserable person. He himself, like, he says he's miserable. He can never connect with anybody. So he's just like a totally nihilistic monster, actually, in the novels, right? And he's miserable. And the irony is that that's what the people who run the West wanted to turn the West into, was a bunch of atomized, materialistic, just totally self-absorbed people that can't have any connections with any other people. Yeah, so he's an image of the atomization that they wanted to create in the West, and that's why he's so useful for propaganda.
They didn't just do it with, like, music and film. They did it with, like, art, like real art, like even like painting, people, famous painters, famous philosophers, authors. Noam Chomsky was part of this group. I forget what they call Operation something, where they wanted to push artists who questioned the U.S. government and what they did. So it made it look like that capitalism was more open-minded to anti-authority than communism.
Yeah, there was a CIA project called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. There's a whole book by academic CIA and the Cultural Cold War. And they funded Jackson Pollock, they funded Andy Warhol, all those people to create just garbage art, like people vomiting on literally like just pee on a canvas, vomit on the canvas, all of that kind of shit. That's straight up funded by the CIA, 100%.
Now, obviously in the 50s, but I grew up in the 80s, and the propaganda that I remember the most in the 80s was that Russia, they're all red. It looks like Mars. All these people are watching you, like KGB. They got black trench coats and a hat, and they watch everything you do, and they're so evil. What was Russian propaganda about the U.S. like? What did they? Because they for sure had propaganda and made us look like Satan, right?
There's some pretty awesome YouTube clips you can pull up. You can find ones of propaganda exposés that they would run on air in Soviet Russia back in the 80s. And I'm not saying I'm not Soviet, or I'm not pro-communist. I think both sides again of that are bad news. But if you watch those documentaries about American propaganda, they're totally accurate. Like, it's all about the stuff we're talking about, right? Again, that doesn't mean that the communist Soviet system is good. It's not. It was a nightmare. But both of these systems are materialistic, atheistic, nihilistic systems. One of them is about, just follow your own base desires and be a coon pod consumerist. And then the other one is, worship the state, worship your daddy figure Stalin, worship Khrushchev. The collective, cosmic Soviet state will take us to, a space-based utopia like Star Trek, right? So it's two different mythologies that were clashed together, but they do call out in their propaganda the fact that we're run by a corporate elite. We are programmed to be basically mindless consumers, right? We're mind controlled. All of that shit was true. But that doesn't mean that I'm saying communism or Sovietism is good. But that was the propaganda that the KGB was beaming out to the Russians.
We got a video. Hibbler, can you play this? We just pulled Russian propaganda.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Our TV can always be trusted. I would never trust American TV, all those channels and different programs.
In recent years, the Soviet media has said much about the American way of life, and its portrait of America is a dark one. It is designed to convince the Soviet people that our social system is anything but desirable. It emphasizes violence, drug abuse, unemployment, and overall exploitation of the American people by the government. Since the average Soviet citizen has no alternative source of information about the United States, the Soviet version is probably accepted at face value. The Soviet people, however, seem to be curious about America and impressed by its material success. Last summer, Pravda published a lengthy article entitled Incurable Disease, which dealt with U.S. unemployment and bank failures. About the same time, Moscow was saying that there are 40 million Americans who are literally starving, while a select group of capitalists continues to get richer. Moscow television celebrated the 4th of July last year by assuring viewers that America is the quintessence of an unjust capitalist system that keeps millions of families living below the official poverty line. The unemployed are described as having been deprived of the right to work, while Moscow television shows film of locked factory gates and people being evicted from their homes. The message in all this is that the capitalist system in America is unfair and is, in fact, a failure at providing for basic human needs or maintaining continued national growth. This broadly distorted statement is aimed at convincing the Soviet people that Soviet communism works much better by providing economic security for them. The U.S. economy, as described by the Soviet media, is being driven by raging militarism. Defense spending is reported to be the cause of unemployment in civilian industries, and also the cause of the huge federal deficit. The Soviet Defense Ministry newspaper Red Star says that American young people are receiving militarist brainwashing from films like Rambo. Also included as malicious and distorted are Telephone, a film about a KGB assassin on the job in the U.S., and Red Dawn, which depicts an invasion of Colorado by Cuban and Soviet troops.
Nice.
That's actually true. Like all of those movies that were mentioned actually were Pentagon propaganda movies.
They make
no lie detected. No lie detected. I mean,
yeah, they make the United States look like what we think is happening in Venezuela, right? Exactly. They're just showing like, bad parts of the inner city. And, they think like the whole country's
the whole country's that way, right?
Well, there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, when they talk about how a lot of stuff is suffering here because of how much money we spend on our military, that's 100% true. I mean, 100% true. People are going broke more in America than ever. That's 100% true. Now, if you're asking me if I can pick between capitalism and communism, I'll take capitalism every day.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't detect a lot of lies in there. I mean, it's just like sometimes when you put a mirror up to yourself, you kind of go, what the fuck? And, for me, like I can differentiate between the American people and the American government, just like I can do it with like the Russian people and the Russian government. And where was the lie in a lot of that stuff? The propagandize and all that shit.
I'm giving you all the tracks. You gotta make the playlist. All right, I'm just showing you all the different songs. You arrange them the way you want to. That's all it is. So when you're playing quarter guard, you only have one way. You can go dogfight, or you could go deep half stuff. You could do that shit too. Like if I have this right here, I can go to dogfight. Right? I can go boom, come up here and attack. This is like a tug of war grip right here. This is a burrito grip, bam, here. And then from here, so to get that underhook, he's not letting me get the underhook, but if I can get a hold of a 2-on-1 burrito grip here, and then shoot up and pin it and get up on my elbow here. And then I'm gonna go bam, and just dive in and grab this. And then once I'm here, I'm gonna half plex him, make him base, and then bring that knee up, boom. If you can't get the lockdown, fuck it, but you got quarter guard, get that underhook. Start battling the wrist. Get that up, boom. Did that help?
I mean, like usually there's some sort of truth in what, I mean, at least maybe not in the 80s when we were still all making money here, but if we take that to what's going on right now, seems like that's what's going on.
Now, Jay, you mentioned Dave McGowan earlier, and I've talked about him before. He wrote the book Weird Scenes in Laurel Canyon. And for those of you that have never heard of it or heard of him, it's basically a book about the 60s, Laurel Canyon, basically in Hollywood, that whole area. It's like a community that lives in the hills, right? In the middle of Hollywood. And the main street that runs through it is Laurel Canyon. And that's actually the name of the area too. And the book basically talks about how in the 60s, a lot of that's the 60s music, a lot of the hippie music that came from Laurel Canyon had connections to a secret military base right there in Laurel Canyon called Lookout Mountain Laboratories, which was actually the most sophisticated movie studio at the time. And the official story is that they were filming nuclear bombs blowing up, and they were analyzing them. But really, in Dave McGowan's talking about, he's focusing more on the music, but the fact that there was all these American intelligence officers in that area living there, they had families, they had kids. And when it just so happens to be coincidentally that all these bands that came out of nowhere, Mamas and the Papas, even the Doors, all these bands, so many, the list goes on and on, that they had people in the bands that were directly related to these intelligence officers, like their kids.
Yeah.
And when you look at these bands, they didn't struggle. They had no demos. They immediately got pushed. And then you find out that there was, for a big portion of those bands in the 60s, there was really one band doing all the music. They're called the Wrecking Crew. And they were doing all the music. Like, music was so fake in the 60s. And I always knew there was a reason I was never really into 60s music. I mean, I like Jimi Hendrix. I like, Black Sabbath but most 60s music, I just did not vibe with. I started liking 70s music. So Dave McGowan wrote this book about all these connections. And he's basically saying that the hippie movement musically was quite possibly, based on all the connections, some kind of CIA, PSYOP, FBI, PSYOP to discredit the anti-war movement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the key purposes, according to Dave. I think he's right about that. I think there was a lot of things going on. I mean, they were experimenting with new types of psychological warfare. They were experimenting with new types of ways to live. So a lot of the hippies and the communal living, they were trying to prep people for where they wanted to take us when they bring in the New World Order, when they bring in austerity. And you can find high-level white papers talking about using counterculture, creating and steering counterculture to engineer future generations to accept things like the Great Reset, accept things like, what the World Economic Forum says now: you'll own nothing, you'll have nothing, you'll be happy, right? I mean, Klaus literally just said we would hack your bodies, you would own nothing, you would be happy. I mean, this is all the same attitude of like communal hippies, and they didn't come up with these ideas. They were being told by people working with high-level military. Some generals were involved in this. If you watch that documentary, I'd forgotten about this. I just did a review on my YouTube channel of this documentary the other day. It's called The Unabomber, the Internet, and LSD.
Oh, shit.
By a German dude that made this documentary in like 2003 or 4. It's a forgotten documentary, but it's really important because he points out that the hippies in the Silicon were also connected to the Silicon Valley people, and they had the idea for the internet from DARPA, right? But it wasn't hippies that came up with this. It was like the military industrial complex was talking to a lot of these hippies and seeding these ideas amongst these groups and doing experiments. And that's why Tim Leary, there's a clip, you can pull it up on YouTube, where he's like, if you want to thank anybody for the 60s counterculture, he says, thank the CIA, because they were the ones giving not just the people at like the music festivals and the Laurel Canyon scene, but Owsley Stanley was giving, at the direction of the CIA, giving the Grateful Dead 4 million tabs of LSD throughout their concerts.
Yeah, dude, 100%. Duncan.
And I mean, I'm not trying to be preachy. Like, I mean, I've done a lot of acid plenty of times, but I'm saying that like the purpose of it being given out was an experiment to see how it changed people, how they went and what they had done. Now this sounds kind of crazy, but they studied indigenous tribes and they studied like shamanism, and they wanted to see how they could create a culture where people would submit to the pop culture figure or the social engineers or whatever, like a ritual initiation and the submission to a shaman. So that the M Culture Project is literally kind of birthed out of like shamanism, like Carlos Castaneda stuff. And how can we get people to be total mind control slaves of the culture that we create? And so I think, yeah, you're right. A lot of people who were in that scene were legitimate anti-war people, but a lot of people weren't. And they were just created wholesale out of, like you said, like if you were, I'm trying to remember the bands. It was like the Monkees, the Byrds, Beach Boys, Mamas and Papas. Wrecking Crew did all the studio music. I mean, they would play sometimes publicly, but the studio music was all the Wrecking Crew, right? And that's because these bands had to kind of be propped up. And by the way, they were promoted by some of the big record labels. They were promoted by Time Magazine, which was the Skull and Bones CIA run magazine by Henry Luce.
Yeah.
I mean, he was featuring the counterculture.
Chronos is Time, Black Cubit Saturn.
Yeah. I think they were doing that on purpose, right? And I mean, I heard you, I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day, Eddie, where you were talking about Zappa. I'd forgotten that Dave talks about Frank Zappa's dad worked at the Edgewood Arsenal, which is a biowarfare lab. And it's the same lab connected to Dow Chemicals that created STP, which is this like horrible drug that a bunch of people took and went crazy on. But it was his dad that was like involved in that. And I think he was part of that culture creation scene too.
Yeah, and it's so crazy that Jim, the whole Jim Morrison story.
Oh yeah, Admiral Morrison, Gulf of Tonkin, right?
That his Jim Morrison's dad. First of all, Jim Morrison, I mean, I could be totally wrong, but this is what Dave McGowan was saying. Jim Morrison wasn't like your typical rock star where he grew up wanting to be a rock star. He was writing a lot of poetry in school. He knew he wanted to sing. He was just a regular guy with no rock star aspirations. And all of a sudden, according to Dave McGowan, he's this big rock star. And coincidentally, and coming from LA in the Laurel Canyon, coincidentally, his dad, no one disputes this so far, his dad orchestrated the Gulf of Tonkin, which was the false flag that got us into Vietnam. Isn't that a fucking coincidence? If that's true, maybe it's not true, but damn, I haven't heard anybody say it's not true.
It is true, though.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
If you take a look at what's going on in modern day today, how many times do we find out that somebody famous, their uncle, their father, their mother, their cousin is famous? There's always a story. It's never just like very rarely, and I know a couple people, but very rarely at the highest levels does it just come, mostly actors. I think stand-up comics, I know a couple people like Sebastian Maniscalco's parents are just immigrants, and Leslie Jones and Tiffany Haddish, they didn't have any connections, but maybe I'm wrong. But I don't hear it on that, but most of these people, like Jennifer Aniston's mother was a famous casting director. And then there's you go through celebrities who are military brats. They're everywhere, and they love to blow them up because those people grew up in military families where everything's about following orders and doing the best for your government and all that stuff.
Right.
And it just happens over and over. But I find it very interesting. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as the internet becomes more and more powerful and the legacy media starts to die. Is it going to be easy for them to blow these people up anymore?
I don't know, man. It's the one thing that trips me out is it's not just what you're saying, Sam. Totally true. All these connections, Anderson Cooper is from isn't he from the Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be hey, you know what? People are just hooking each other up. It's all about who you know. Your parents hook you up. It's no big deal. You want to hook up your kids. I get that too. But then you have Bill Gates and his parents. You know what I mean? You look into Bill Gates' parents, oh shit. Wasn't
Jeff
his
Bezos?
mom? Isn't his mom didn't she have something to do with the founding of Planned Parenthood or something?
Yeah, his dad. Yeah.
Oh, his dad. And his dad was a eugenicist. His dad ran
the Central Bank of Washington. His mother was very high up at IBM, where he basically got his what's it called? His system for his computers. I forget what the exact word is, but he got that from her. I mean, I look at the Microsoft logo is a swastika. I mean, it's already fucking there, dude. It's his operating system. There it is.
The weird thing about the Laurel Canyon scene, and it's the same with Hollywood. What I did in my book with Hollywood, Dave did in his book with a lot of the music scene, but that overlaps with Hollywood too. You have all of these people that are supposed to be counterculture, that are against the system, against the establishment, but almost all of the really important players in that Laurel Canyon scene come from not just high-level military families or government-connected families, but intelligence families. That's the weird part. It's a lot of people who, have these high-level intelligence connections, like Bruce Dern. That family, he had I can't remember if it's the father, the granddad or whoever it was, but somebody was the Department of State, head of the Department of State in the Dern family. And then they have Skull and Bones in that family too. So Bruce Dern's uncle, that's who it was. Archibald McLeish was Skull and Bones was high level State Department. Dennis Hopper, everybody knows who Dennis Hopper was. Crazy Frank in Blue Velvet, right? His dad was OSS. Stills of Crosby, Stills and Nash. He did Black Ops stuff in Vietnam for the CIA, Special Forces operations. I mean, it goes on and on and on to the point where it's like, it's almost like all these people who become the figures of the counterculture. The weird part about it is that what they're counterculture, but they come from not just military or government connected families, but military intelligence families. That's the weird part about it. That's the thread that seems to run through this, like the Dern family, Bruce Stern's uncle, Archibald McLeish, was Skull and Bones. Dennis Hopper's dad was in the OSS. Stills of Crosby, Stills and Nash was CIA special operations in Vietnam. And so it gets to the point where the Rand Corporation, through Alfred Wolfstetter, he was having meetings in Laurel Canyon studying this counterculture scene. Now, I mean, the Rand Corporation is the most establishment type of thing you could think of, one of the top think tanks in the world. It basically created modern America. It was the brains behind the entire Cold War. Why would they be studying the counterculture scene in Laurel Canyon if this was an organic, thing that came about on its own? But I mean, there's just so many connections that at a high level that I think Dave's overall thesis is correct.
Now, one thing that's such a hot topic these days is Elon Musk. Now, what are his parents connected to any kind of deep state stuff? All I know is they own like a gem mine or something in South Africa or something like that. That's all I know, right?
So the thing that I know about that is just that his granddad was a technocrat. So he was part of the technocracy party and might have even founded it, something like that. So in that regard, I mean, he comes from a family that believes in technocracy to run things. But, I think everybody knows about Tesla, PayPal, all that kind of stuff, kind of getting to where I don't think any of those corporations get to where they are without there being like the approval of the military industrial complex, basically. So to that extent, I mean, he has that connection, that background. I mean, I don't know what his motives are, what he's really trying to do. I don't have any hard opinion on that, but the closest thing that I could say is that to it being conspiratorial is just that his granddad was part of the technocracy party.
His granddad, went through Africa and was searching for Nephilim and Anunnaki, bro.
Really?
Like, that's what, yeah.
Wow.
Very famously was like on this search for the Anunnaki.
That could be a psyop within a psyop, though.
Psyops on psyops,
yeah,
dog.
I mean, you know me, dog. There's all kind of spaces of psyop. You know me. But now, what do you think about like the one of the most fascinating figures to me in the history of America is Charles Manson. That story, I mean, it goes so many different ways. I mean, you got the mainstream story, which is he's satanic and he ordered, his cult to kill Sharon Tate and all those people up at that Cielo Drive house. And then he ordered them to kill the La Biancas and all that, and that whole mainstream narrative. But then you hear, he was basically, he was in jail his whole life. He was accustomed to being in jail. He would rather be in jail. He's been in and out of prison his whole life. And they used him, like one conspiracy theory is the CIA or whoever taught him MK Ultra mind control techniques.
Yeah.
And got him out of jail, funded him. And basically Charles Manson was an experiment, a psyop. Where do you stand with that?
No, I totally take that view. I think that there's pretty clear evidence that at some point he was involved in mind control, especially with the time in prison, because he went through the levels of Scientology to become a theta clear. I think that's a really important piece of information in his background, his story that suggests that. I think
the Scientology connection is huge. That connects like a whole different dimension of conspiracies, and also the Boys Town connection. Yes. Holy shit, that's a nut. That like, damn, like he was in Boys Town, and that's like the heart of child trafficking. Right there in Omaha, Nebraska, when you look into the Franklin cover up, like, holy shit, like Manson was connected to that and Scientology. Like, whoa, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so Tom O'Neill's book is good on that. I think he's pretty much right. I'm not trying to diss him or anything, but I mean, I thought Manson was a CIA experiment for a long time. Like there was an old book I read, Sinister Forces, a 3-part trilogy. And I think the second or the third part of that was arguing a long time ago. That's actually my publisher, the guy that published my book. He publishes that book too. But that book was arguing that Manson was an MK Ultra CIA project a long time ago too. So I went super deep this last couple of years into the serial killers and how a lot of that connects to Manson. And Manson's actually connected to multiple serial killers. Some of the people that worked with him in terms of part of that thesis also is that he was like a hitman, and his group was working as kind of contract killing for different crime syndicates or for people that needed to be killed. So that's part of what was going on, I think, with the Manson killings, is that there was snuff stuff, there was drug stuff, and some of that might have come out. And so Manson was told, you need to send some people to take care of this situation so it doesn't get out. I think that's the most sensible explanation. And O'Neill in his book, like he talks about a lot of the people in the circles, the direct circles of Manson were working with organized crime. Some of them were connected to the CIA as an assassin, like that Tico guy. Some of the people were former OSS who are now like hanging out with Manson. I mean, it's just like too many people in his circles that are like, and how does he suddenly like around like the highest levels of A-listers? And you know what I mean? Like, the Beatles know who he is all of a sudden. And the Beatles were hanging out in the Laurel Canyon scene too. They're also part of the Laurel Canyon scene.
One story is before I got into the CIA theory on Charles Manson, I read somewhere or saw, I forget where it was, but someone said that the way he got into the Laurel Canyon crew with, all the rock stars and all the A-listers is that he's the mainstream narrative on him is he's a mastermind as far as mind control goes, and as far as being like a cult leader and controlling women and all that stuff. So before I found out the CIA stuff, the story was he would he played guitar and he had some songs and shit. He was a songwriter, and he had all these girls that around him in his cult, and they'd do whatever he said. And he said strategically, to get a record deal, he was going to hang out in Hollywood, hang out at the Rainbow, and find some rock stars and send his girls over to him, to basically, get him erections.
Right.
And then Charles Manson would just stroll over and say, hey, you meet my girls, you want to party with them? They like you. Right. Let's go party somewhere. And then he got into the A-list circles by using women and sending his women in.
Yes.
That's what I heard initially. There might be some truth to that too, but I'm totally on board with he was, guided by the CIA the whole time.
Well, that in that O'Neill book that Sam just had that Tom O'Neill on, and he talks about he names the dudes, like he says that Tico guy was a CIA assassin, and he hung out.
Tico was who? Tico was I don't remember his name. I just remember Tex. There was a Tex, right?
There's Tex Watson.
Tex Watson.
That's part of the immediate circle. But if I remember, the dude that Tom O'Neill says introduced Manson to everybody was a guy who was like a known, like high level CIA assassin, drug dealer dude. And his last name is Teko. I don't know if it's Teco or Tico, however you pronounce it, but says that he was buddies with Hank Fine, who was an OSS guy. And together the Fine guy sent Green Acres star, because I wrote this down, Addie Albert, to Mexico for assassin and spy work. And then together, this crew is who introduced Manson to these higher level people. So basically a known drug dealer, assassin guys who kind of introduced him. And by the way, to back up what you're saying about the technique with drugs or with girls. So there was another dude who was the model of Manson Gowan covers named Vito Paulikas. And Vito was like an experiment in how to create a little pop culture cult like that. And he has all the similarities to Manson before Manson. So he was like this wandering dude. He had a bunch of groupies around him. He would compromise people with the girls. He would give them drugs, but he never did drugs. And you can find interviews with Vito Paulikas. He's crazy, wild dude, but he was like, "Oh, I don't do drugs. I only give drugs to the chicks." Right? It's like he just handles them basically. Respect. He had the name. He had a nickname that was really similar to Manson's nickname. It was like God of Fuck or something like that was his nickname, and then Manson's was Fuck God or something like that. Like, I am the fuck God. Like, I am the one who, in that sense, right? And then what eventually came out too was that there was a higher level cult above Manson, 4P, which was part of the Process Church. And the Process Church is the key, by the way, just as a little side note, that connects not just Manson, but also Son of Sam, because Son of Sam was connected to the Process Church through this higher level cult.
Now, it seems to me that a lot of the serial killers that are the famous ones, anyways, it seems like the famous ones, the nationwide smashes, like, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy and all that. It seems like they're all connected to some kind of psychological operation, some kind of military intelligence program or something, right? It seems like if you're a famous serial killer, you probably are connected to the deep state.
Yeah, man. So like in this book, Douglas Valentine, famous book on Vietnam, I couldn't believe it when I read this. I mean, so Dave McGowan, right, he wrote a book called Program to Kill, and his thesis in that book was that there seems to be a connection between a lot of serial killers and Vietnam wartime service, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, well, would there be anything in service in Vietnam that might potentially connect these people to this crazy shit, like, cannibalism, right? This kind of stuff. I mean, just wild stuff. Why so many Vietnam vets come back acting crazy? Movies even kind of portray this, right? Apocalypse Now, think about Colonel Kurtz, like he goes nuts. He's living out in the middle of the woods, basically in the rainforest or something, right? He like creates his own cult out in the rainforest. If you remember Apocalypse Now, remember Dolph Lundgren's character in Universal Soldier? He's got an ear necklace, right?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, barely. Universal Soldier. That was
Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren.
1993 or something.
Yeah. But Dolph Lundgren's character is a Vietnam vet who has gone nuts, right? And he's like a crazy cannibal killer but here's the thing. So in Douglas Valentine's book, he says that one of the ideas that the CIA came up with in the Phoenix program was to train assassins, train SEAL members, train Black Ops people to go out and do all kinds of ritual murders, including cannibalism, eating the organs of the villains, putting nails into the third eye, because this would freak out the Viet Cong when they saw this, because they thought the third eye was like a special symbol, right? It was called the Eye of God, right, to the Viet Cong, and so it was a form of psyops where they basically trained people to be cannibals, and that's what is amazing, is that he admits that. So the Phoenix program was training serial killer cannibals, basically. And so is it any surprise that these people come back from Vietnam and they would be continually, they're just nuts, basically, but it was a government program.
It's a famous Neil Brennan joke about what was his name that got that punched his girlfriend in the elevator? Ray Rice, wasn't it? Right,
Yes.
Ray Rice. He's like, oh, you were playing football in the elevator, right? It's like, you're these super violent people at work, and then you go home and you're supposed to be able to turn that off, which you should, but not everybody can. So you train these people to kill, and they come home, and that's what they do. Yeah. That's just what they do.
So I think Richard Ramirez, I think the guy that got him into the occult stuff was his uncle or cousin. And I think he was in the Phoenix program. So that's one serial killer that we know was in it. I found old news clippings where it does talk about Son of Sam. When he did military service, he did experiment with LSD. We don't know for sure if he was in the MK Ultra project or not. Dahmer was stationed 20 minutes away from another serial killer in Germany in the 70s. And the German government they wanted to investigate Dahmer. I found the news clip. I couldn't believe this. I found the news clipping on this for unsolved murders when Dahmer was stationed in Germany. And a high level general asked that he wouldn't let the German government investigate Dahmer. So why is a general like stepping in? Yeah, isn't that crazy? To protect
There's also
Dahmer?
A famous story of Jeffrey Dahmer while he was in high school calling the president of the United States while he was on some school trip.
That's crazy. That's real. That's 100% real.
Well,
was it John Wayne Gacy or was it Dahmer?
No, you're right. It's he called the office of the VP because the president was gone, so he called the VP's office. But
that was Dahmer? That was Dahmer?
No, that was excuse me. Yeah, that was Dahmer when he was in high school. So why would that dude be that connected, right? And he got his whole class like access to the VP, which is odd. But even crazier is John Wayne Gacy. He was vetted by the Secret Service, and there's pictures of him with Jimmy Carter's wife, right? Who's the other? I'm going blank on my serial killers, but the one that was
happens all the time. Happens all the time.
Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy, yeah, exactly. He was a rising GOP star, and he was roommates with a State Department dude when he was at college, and it's odd, right? I mean that he would be involved in this, but he got in trouble in college for breaking into a senator's office and stealing documents. We don't know what documents he stole, but he was a political operative for the GOP. A lot of people don't know that about Ted Bundy, but by the way, John Wayne Gacy was a very active political operative for the Democrats. So equal opportunity serial killers here on both sides of the party. I'm not trying to pick a party, but both parties have their serial killers, by the way. But Ted Bundy's roommate was a high level State Department dude. And then he was tasked with breaking into a professor's office. That professor later became chair of like the CIA Intelligence Committee or whatever. McDermott, I think was his name. But why would Ted Bundy, future serial killer, be breaking into the office of a guy who was in charge of high-level Senate intelligence stuff within a few years? I mean, in other words, there's all these bizarre things with the serial killers that don't match up to the mainstream story about them. By the way, a bunch of them were in satanic cults too, which the media doesn't talk about.
Yeah, I was about to bring up the Church of Satan with Anton LaVey, and you were talking about Richard Ramirez a little bit ago, and I used to be fascinated with Richard Ramirez. I grew up, in LA in the 80s while this shit was happening. Like, I had relatives, and my mom was like, stay in, don't go out. Richard Ramirez is going to get you. I lived through that shit and got a little fascinated with him. Not like I wanted to be like him, but I'm like, whoa, this guy's insane. He's like, he's like a girls liked him. He had groupies and shit. They blew him up, and he was such a vicious killer. Like he would just like stomp people to death with his boots and beat the shit out of people with tire irons and would like abduct little girls and molest them, but wouldn't kill them, which is weird. Wouldn't kill them. He'd like drop them off. But old people, he killed the shit out of them. But like you said, his uncle had ties to the military, and he was somehow like, even though even documentaries that don't link him to any kind of CIA activity, they do say that, you know, his uncle had a lot to do with the way he came out and what he did, and his uncle was in the military. But they also talk about, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it comes up that he visited the Church of Satan once or twice, and knew and like visited with Anton LaVey or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you know about that?
Yeah, no, that's true. So let me think. So check this out. I found my old notes on this. So Son of Sam had connections to the Process Church, as we said, and that links him to Manson. Zodiac Killer would include not just Gnostic, but Satanic and OTO symbolism in the letters that he supposedly wrote to the cops and whatnot. Dahmer erected an altar that was going to, what he called his death altar, or his power altar, where he was going to have the skulls of the victims. By the way, there's also a camera in Dahmer's apartment, which not many people have talked about that, but he had a video camera set up in the corner, which suggests also that a lot of this could be filmed for various purposes. But the people don't ever talk about that in the case of serial killer, but almost all of them have some element of it being filmed. Bundy, the bodies would have the blood drained out of them. And there were claims of other serial killers that claimed to know Bundy that said that he was involved in ritual abuse. Manson, as we said, had connections to Scientology and the Process Church, which also connect him to Son of Sam. Henry Lee Lucas claimed to be part of a Hand of Death cult connected to the Matamoros, where they did find near the area that he said they would find bodies. When there was an investigation into the Matamoros cult, they found a shed full of dead bodies. That's even mainstream news. You look up that. As you said, Ramirez, Church of Satan, and meeting with LaVey. BTK Killer, his art includes a lot of occult stuff, and he claims to have been possessed by two demons, one called Factor X and one called Batter. David Parker Ray, that's one of the worst serial killers. He ran his own personal satanic cult. Then he's called the Toy Box Killer. Herb Baumeister, there was satanic artwork and pentagrams inscribed on the wall of a barn next to where he had committed his crimes. And the point of all this is just to say that, like, the profile that the mainstream media puts out is not true, right? The Ripper Crew, 4 dudes, they were a satanic group that 8 people. The Dutroux affair, that included satanic stuff, which people don't know about. And that's written about in the Irish Times, where they say that he was connected to a satanic cult that wanted him to also commit murders for them. The Monster of Florence was a satanic serial killer. Anyway, there's a couple more, but I think you get the idea, right? Like nobody talks about that.
If you look at all these modern school shooters, there's so many of them have like CIA, FBI connections. Even David Hogg, who wasn't the shooter, his father was FBI. There's videos of kids going, yo, this kid, this ain't a kid. This guy's agent of chaos or agent provocateur. You saw high school kids saying that about David Hogg. His father was FBI, started a business that he sold for about $300 million that produced nothing. There are videos, and we talk about this all the time, Eddie, about all the videos about that Paradise or Parkland shooting that, like, why are they out? Why did that get out? I think it's nonlinear warfare to get us to fight with each other. But one of them is David Hogg talking about how he wasn't even there at the school. Then you have videos of him slating people. There's supposed to be a school shooter going on. He's slating people Wednesday, 10 a.m., blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God. And it was during a drill they were talking about. The kid who supposedly, quote unquote, air quotes, shot up the school was part of a very, very controversial Kids at Risk program. We've seen this before. Jeffrey Epstein, right? This is the crazy thing. Jeffrey Epstein had a camp in which he brought people to. Maria Bamford went there. Terry Crawford or Cruz, whatever the famous guy who did the Old Spice commercials that made his tits dance. That guy went there. A couple people went there. I mean, these things don't just happen. I mean, we got all the kids who were part of the Mickey Mouse Club that just end up getting used and abused and then doing propaganda. Ellen, I mean, like, I know this goes back, but Ellen just in email saying she'll do anything the CIA wants her to do. Like, that's all there, dude. The Vegas shooter had FBI, CIA connection.
Oh yeah, forgot about that, dude.
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with Ted Gunderson, right?
Yeah.
You've looked into him. Ted Gunderson he's no longer with us. Some people think he got murdered. He thought he was being poisoned. But Ted Gunderson was the head of the FBI in Los Angeles for like 20 years or so. And when he retired, he, like many other retired FBI agents, they start their own private investigation firm, and they just make, they're still working. And he got hired to look into the McMartin case, where that was a big, huge, famous case in the 80s, all over the news, where there was this preschool, and I think it was Redondo Beach in that area. It's in the South Bay in LA. There was a preschool that went down for a child molestation. So the mainstream narrative was, a couple guys, the people that were running the daycare place or the preschool place were molesting the kids, big trial. I don't remember what happened to them, but there was rumors that that preschool was connected to an international child trafficking ring, and it was a part of a big monster, but the mainstream narrative never really got into that at all. They just isolated event that these people are going to go down or whatever. And then, after it was all said and done, there was still people, they were looking into it. And according to Ted Gunderson, he got hired to do some more investigating around that school. And I think the school had been demolished at that point. Yeah. But what he got hired to do is find out if there was some underground tunnels, like, because a bunch of the kids were saying they're taking us under the house, and we're doing satanic rituals, and the kids were saying that, and people were just saying, oh no, they were being ignored, and they're kids, I don't know, they got imaginations and all that stuff. But Ted Gunderson, he looked into it. I don't know what kind of instrument he used, but he used some kind of, I think, if memory serves me right, he wore some kind of underground seismic thing or whatever, where they detected that there was some, I don't know if I'm right. Am I correct so far with the Martin case?
But did you see, I think it's been about 2 years now, but 2 years ago, the FBI declassified all the information on the Finders case, and the Finders case, which is a verified international trafficking thing. In that declassification, they mentioned the McMartin trial too, and they admitted that there were tunnels. That was part of the declassification.
Oh shit, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, because that's what Ted Gunderson
he was right.
Figured out.
There were tunnels.
He figured that out like 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
Exactly. And the mainstream media lied and covered up. So no, there's no tunnel.
That because that sets satanic panic for what's coming down the line, which is right now. But even, again, like, we watched some shit from Disney. We did something on Disney and the occult and all that stuff. And like, they've been putting this satanic shit out forever. This isn't brand new what they're doing. This has been happening forever. It just seems like they're more brazen now.
Yeah. And it seems like my son is, he's a little too young to get red pilled. But, I try a little, you know what I mean? But he's so into Harry Potter, and he loves Harry Potter, man. And when we go to Universal Studios, he puts on the cape, and I'm just sitting there just going, fuck. Am I just letting them? I mean, it just seems like when you go to Harry Potter World, they're grooming the kids for satanic rituals. That's basically what it is. And I'm like, but he's so happy. He loves it. He's doing the spells and all that. And I'm like, man, I got to stop this. But it's tough right now because he's just enjoying life and fuck. What do you think about the whole Harry Potter genre, Jay?
I mean, I go back and forth on that one because I mean, overall, the message itself isn't bad. I mean, the fantasy element is iffy. I mean, I'm a big fan of like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. I mean, I think that stuff has good messages. So I guess it just kind of depends on how the fantasy or whatever the magic's being used. It could be used in a negative way, which I think Disney does that quite a bit. But it also could be used in a positive way. I mean, there's a lot of good messages in, like ancient mythology, that kind of stuff too. So it just depends on the, case by case basis, but I didn't really get into Harry Potter because I was too old for that stuff when it was kind of getting popular in the 2000s or whatever. But I mean, I grew up reading Lord of the Rings. So to me, that one, all the messages in that are like really good, positive stuff.
Well, from Lord of the Rings, man, when it first came out, I went to go see it. Love going to the movies, love watching the trailers. First Lord of the Ring comes out. I fell asleep halfway through. I'm gonna be honest. I woke up, they're hiking, go back to sleep, wake up again, they're fucking hiking. Again. I go, where the fuck are they hiking to?
The fantasy hiking movie.
And then they're on a cliff and they go, that's where we're going. You're going to Mordor? That's gonna take you months. You know what I mean? And I know they got hobbit feet, and I know they're all calloused, but I'm like, dog, you need to put some fucking hiking boots on. No, I don't care how many calluses you got on your fucking feet. You cannot walk through fucking rocky mountains that go on for miles and miles. But anyways, I see the second one, fall asleep again. Third one, saw that shit while I was in Maui for my jiu-jitsu master's wedding. Fell asleep to that one too. I'm just like, these motherfuckers, it's just a hiking movie. And I swear, I think it was a hiking psyop because nobody hiked before that shit. 3 people were hiking before Lord of the Rings. After Lord of the Rings, everybody's at Runyon Canyon.
That's
a fucking hobbit. I think there was a hiking psyop. But when you break down like the storyline, now that my son's all into it. So now I'm watching it now. Now I'm awake and I'm not asleep and I'm trying to pay attention to it. And I know you see a lot of good shit in it and I know you're a fan, but it's so huge. It's so huge to me. I saw that as a New World Order movie. I mean, what are they doing? They're trying to get all the little castles together to unite against the evil orcs. You know what I mean? And the castles that say, fuck that, we don't want to get involved. What happens to them? They get fucking run over by these orcs, right? So it's like the lesson is, hey, if we don't unite and with these United Nations and this New World Order to fight the common enemy, we're all going to die. So we all have to unite. United Nations against, New World Order, against fake alien invasion or against terrorists. They're making nuclear bombs. We need to unite together to go after them. Mm-hmm. I saw it as a New World Order propaganda movie.
I could see that if I didn't know what I just kind of discovered the last week. I covered this on the 4th Hour of Alex Jones the other day. I did a deep dive on C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. So C.S. Lewis wrote this trilogy, the guy that wrote the Narnia stuff. Like he wrote a space trilogy, which is a dystopian space trilogy where in the 3rd book, he basically puts the Illuminati into the book. He calls it it's like a scientific Tavistock Institute place in the UK that's trying to create a world government and kill everybody. And so he wrote into his story Tolkien as the kind of the lead hero character. And so what happens is that aliens are demons. The alien demons are trying to get everybody to go along with the world government. The Tolkien character is a hero, and in the novel, he explains the real meaning of Tolkien's books were that the ring is basically a symbol for total technological surveillance and power. That's why the tower that has the all-seeing eye on it, that's ultimately trying to spy on everybody. And they basically want to create an inverted version of the incarnation of Christ. They want an antichrist God-man, basically. So the third book of Tolkien's trilogy, or excuse me, of Lewis's trilogy, is explaining the meaning of the third Tolkien trilogy, right? Does that make sense? That it's about, what it's about is that Sauron wants to kill everybody, who's the satanic character in Tolkien's trilogy, and that's explained in C.S. Lewis's trilogy, because the same entity is trying to depopulate and kill everybody in his space trilogy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but the way I look at it is, yes, people are born good. I think evil people, they had shit fucked up in their childhood. That's what makes an evil person. I'm convinced that we are just like dogs. You raise dogs are all about love. All dogs, they just want love. That's all they want. They want love more than food. But if you beat the shit out of a dog, he's gonna fucking be mean, and he's gonna be skittish. He's gonna be afraid. He's gonna attack you. So when you're trying to unite people, good people, against anything, you got to paint that anything out to be evil, because we're good and we want to stop evil. So you got to make it out as evil. You need a reason to unite, because you're not going to have Lord of the Rings where the orcs are good people, and like that eye is like a good eye, trying to stomp out evil. It has to be evil. Darth Vader has to be dark. It has to be. So what they're doing is, like, in my opinion, they're using our hearts to so they're training us to unite against evil. Yes, we're all uniting against evil. If you don't unite, the evil's going to get you. So you have no choice. We all have to fight together against evil. And once they got us going on that, everyone's like, yes, unite against evil. Mission accomplished. Now they're going to create whatever evil they want, because they already got us to attack evil. So all they got to do now, through propaganda, through the media, through newspapers and books or whatever, they're gonna demonize someone who's probably good, make him out to be Darth Vader, make him out to be fucking that eye and Lord of the Rings and Mordor and orcs. You know what I mean? Because all they got to do is, because they already got us on, like, let's unite against evil. Right. So, that's the way I look at it. Yes, it's always like in Batman and Robin, they're always attacking the bad guys, the Joker, the Riddler. It has to be that, that's the way they're going to get us to go along with it.
There's a lot of stuff in Batman too.
What was that?
Billionaire saving us, running around with a little boy, right? And we talked about this. One of the movies was Gotham's in chaos and the masses are now trying the rich. That's demonizing like grassroots populist stuff, like all the when the people come together against the elites, that's bad. A billionaire with a heart of gold, that gets us to trust billionaires, right? I mean, like, Batman's superpower is what? He's got money, he can make shit. That's it. And it's just all mental psyops against. It's just so, the difference between then and now is, like, we have a permanent record called the internet that allows us to all read their fucking playbooks and see it happen in real time. Like, what are we watching now on the internet, man? Like, Netflix will take a white historical character and make it be played by a black person. And that's not, and like, normally be like, I don't care, let actors act. But like, this fits into this kind of cultural Marxism that we're seeing, which is like completely getting everybody not to honor history. This Lakers show right now, the whole fucking movie, the whole TV show is complete bullshit. Jeannie Buss is like making all this stuff happen. She didn't get hired till 10 years after this story, but they had to insert her into the story. Okay. The way they're making a Jerry West look. It's just all these stereotypes because they don't want you to know your history. They don't want to know any history. It's all meant to shish kebab your brain and lower your vibrations. And that's why it's all dying, in my humble opinion, because people are over it. I can't watch this Winning Time anymore because I know the whole thing's a lie.
Jay,
the music is dumb too. Last thing, have you watched any of fucking Coachella? If I hear another dumb chick talk about how there's no good men out there, it's yeah, because you keep supporting these fucking half of momos that are out there, right? Everybody, these guys are all playing guitar with tampons in their assholes, fucking talking about getting pregnant and shit. It's dude, stop bitching about men when all you support are half momos out there, okay?
And
stop with the momos.
Why are we accepting and ignoring at the same time the fact that they're pushing that men could get fucking pregnant and have
it's
periods?
So dumb.
What? We can't, and we're just we just accept it. You know what I mean? We're just I guess you could just Google that, and yeah, you could Google that shit and it says yes, men could get pregnant. How are we just accepting that shit? How come people aren't flipping the fuck out?
It's just an internet thing. Dude, we always talk about television movies. I've had shows where people talk about the computer itself is demonic. Think about what the computer has done. We talk about television, computer, now your phone, it's everywhere you go. And it's just pounding you with propaganda. And then you got all this astroturfing going on Twitter and Instagram. Just everything's ass and just stupidity. And then it's retweets by bots. That's why you got to turn it all off. Nobody's buying them guys. You know who hates that people talk about men can get pregnant? Fucking women can't stand that shit. They can't stand that shit. It's just all they talk. I mean, it's their thing now. Hold on. You can get pregnant without having to have periods? Get the fuck out of here. Nobody's buying into it. Nobody. It's so stupid, dude. You gotta bleed if you can get pregnant. I'm sorry, yeah. That's a price of admission. You don't get free drinks and backstage if you don't bleed once a month. Get the fuck out of here.
It's all doublethink, right? It's just like 1984. That's a huge part of conditioning the sheep. Is constantly hitting them with shit that does not make sense. Opposites, war is peace, strength is weakness. Just constantly hitting them with shit during COVID, the big one, man. They had this billboard right on the 10, and I pass by it every day on my way to the gym. Real big, #alone together.
Yeah, that's nutty.
Exactly. Dude. And that stayed up. That stayed up for 9 months. They wouldn't take that shit down. #alone together. They throw things at society like that to so that we practice doing mental gymnastics to make it make sense. Because you're
totally.
Oh, I see what they mean. Alone together. We're all alone because we're trying to save lives, but everybody's doing it together. So I guess we're together. You know what I mean? So I guess we're together. That's telling someone that's going to get solitary confinement for fucking 10 years, say, listen, it's not that bad. All these motherfuckers in here are in solitary confinement too. So you're going to be all right.
You're right.
Yeah. It makes zero sense, man. That's
they roll those PSYOP catchphrases out, hashtags. Remember the other one, trust the science? It's the same contradictory thing. I mean, science is about doubting and proving it.
Yeah, so trust the science makes no sense. How are you supposed to trust? Isn't science supposed to be fact? You're supposed to trust it? It's supposed to be fact.
Right.
You don't trust facts. You don't trust facts. Facts are just facts. You're not supposed to trust the facts. The only fact you're supposed to trust if someone's telling you a fact that you haven't checked, and you got to trust them, Right. That's what they want. They don't want us to look into it ourselves.
Close your eyes and just... Am I moving? Am I spinning? It's that easy. We're not.
The Earth is stationary, and that is scientific, not pseudoscience.
The Earth is spinning at 1,040 miles an hour. You can't feel it. You can't measure it. You can't observe it. You can't repeat it, but trust us.
People are just deceived. I mean, I grew up from kindergarten. Here's a globe. They gave them a globe at graduation to take home like an inflatable baseball.
So why are they teaching the globe model? Well, the globe is a container, and it's a container of all the known land.
If there's more land,
in the late 1800s, they were talking about more land beyond Antarctica.
The North Pole is a biggie.
Very glamorous destination.
What if we all took our compasses out and just followed them until it stopped?
Oh, it is that far. Oh my God.
Wake up.
what if we can truly become free?
They needed a new model because they wanted a new world order.
Open your eyes.
The physics of water is to find and maintain level.
This is the year of flat Earth.
The next level.
The heliocentric theory is bullshit.
Get ready for the next level.
The next level. The truth cannot be stopped.
They don't want us to actually look at the facts. They want you to trust them with it. We figured it out. We figured it out. That's why when we get into debates and especially like, let's say, flat Earth, for instance. The flat Earth people are saying we don't trust the science that you're putting out. That's propaganda on on so many levels. We don't trust these books that they're putting out, the text. We don't trust that science. And then when you get into debate with them, they just quote shit off the books. I'm like, you haven't figured shit out. You haven't figured shit out. They go, yeah, the sun is, they think they're so smart. The sun is 93 million miles away. The sun is 93 million. They think they're so smart when they say that. I'm like, what? Right. How old were you when you did the experiment to prove that shit? Or did you just read it? Because tell me how you proved yourself that the sun is 93 million miles away. No,
93. What number is that,
and you memorized it. You didn't do any fucking experiment. You read a book and you had faith in
what exactly.
Jay, 93. That's an occult number. That's Thelema. 93. You see 93s, 33s. All the time, man. All the time. So I think I know you're not a flat earther probably, Jay, but I know that there's just like these weird things that you go, okay, dude, like.
No, I'm a skeptic. Like I don't have a position on
me too,
a lot of cosmological stuff. I just don't think that what they say is true. Like I like the Big Bang.
You're on your way, Jay. You're on your way. It's gonna take.
You're almost there.
Big Bang is retarded.
Now, Jay? What do you believe as far as the moon landings? Did we actually go, or do you think it was faked for sure?
Well, let me put it this way: if I accept the mainstream story about the moon landing, I have to also accept that they're literally up there jacking around and playing golf on the moon. So you want me to believe that life and death situation, the slightest little thing could go wrong in this old ass janky 1960s crappy technology, which looks like it's from a B movie. They're out there playing golf on the moon.
Yeah. Okay, you're on your way.
That's retarded. Come on.
You're going to be a flat earther within 18 months. But at first you're not going to want to discredit your work because you've done so much research, and so you've read how many books you read? 5,000. You don't want to bring. Trust me. Are you married?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. If you were single, I would say do not bring up
Right.
trying to get laid. You do
It's
not.
hard to get laid if you're a flat earther.
Yeah, you got to have a separate Instagram with no flat earth shit in it. You know what I mean? You were trying to get laid.
You got to have a
Girls hate
ball,
flat
a
earth.
globe earth behind you.
There's like 4 girls that are into flat earth, but
and they're not hot. Are they flat?
But yeah, I mean the whole think if you so you're at the very least suspect of what they presented as evidence that we went to the moon.
I think that was a psyop. Have you read?
Okay.
Have you read Dave McGowan's book on it? It's great.
Oh, he believes it was fake too.
Oh, he has a book, dude. It's actually funny. It's a literally all he does in his book is show the contradictory claims of the astronauts and what NASA says.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, we lost the technology to go there. Oh, by the way, sorry, we lost all the footage.
Stupid,
yeah.
Isn't that retarded?
Yeah, their
So
representative, Don Pettit, he is not getting blood to every part of his brain. That's 100%. Because you hear that, I mean, you hear that guy. He said, I would go back to the moon in a nanosecond, except we don't have the technology no more. We destroyed the technology. And
a lot of people don't know that. They don't know the crazy shit that NASA has said, right?
Yeah. And, when you go back into the origins of NASA and Wernher von Braun,
right?
Like, wait a minute. When you learn about Operation Paperclip, and then you learn that the Nazis that they brought into the United States after World War II, they changed most of their names, but they didn't change Wernher von Braun's name. Hitler's right-hand man, his Rocket Man. They used Hitler's Rocket Man, and he had a German accent. Like, you would think they would hit that motherfucker. Used him to design the rockets and whatever you want to do. You want to launch a rocket and then fucking land in the Bermuda Triangle? Be my guest. But dude, I think that was not a good move, man. That dude, what?
You know about Jack Parsons too, right?
What was that?
Jack Parsons. You know about him too, right?
Yeah, he JPL. He was the one. JPL was the company that actually built the technology for NASA, and Jack Parsons was. I mean, I hear he was, an occultist. He was into Satan, right?
But known liar too, right? So, like, I mean, he got busted for selling secrets to other countries. I mean, in other words, a totally sus dude, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, everything about it ends up being totally sus. I mean, if you read, even mainstream accounts of the history of NASA, like, in my view, NASA is basically just a front for projecting whatever psyops and like things were necessary at the time. Now I don't really think it matters. It's like now the billionaires have like taken over that. And I mean, I just don't believe any of these billionaire people are actually going to take anybody to
Mars.
They're not, bro.
Man, come on,
you got
dude.
it. Like, it's so amazing to me how everybody's like, oh my God, dude, the Van Allen belt. And then like nobody thinks it could easily be the firmament too.
Have you seen that clip of the NASA guy saying that, well, there's a problem with getting through the Van Allen belt?
Yeah, 100%.
From like 10 years ago. It's a
why
clip
doesn't
of
anyone believe that could be the firmament? Will someone please explain that to me?
Well, so there's a NASA dude saying from 10 years ago saying that the problem with space travel is the Van Allen belt. Well, hello, then how did you go to the moon?
Exactly. It's so fucking obvious, man. I mean, it's so goddamn obvious.
Have you seen the news stories about the rocks that the astronauts gave out?
Yeah,
apparently they're all fake. They're all mainstream media articles admitting that the rocks that Buzz Aldrin, gave us gifts from the moon, they're not from the moon.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Antarctic Treaty?
That you can't go there or whatever?
Yeah. Are you familiar with that at all? I think it was in 1958 when they signed it. Every goddamn country in the world, they said, okay, no, let's protect the penguins and let's leave Antarctica alone. If you want to visit it, You gotta jump through mad hoops and go through all the shit. Then they give you a little tour on this little peninsula. You see a couple penguins. If you're lucky, you'll see a fucking one of those leopard seals. And then boom, there's a symbolic South Pole thing. You take a couple selfies. But it's really, really, really hard to go to. And people don't believe that. Go, anybody can go. Anybody can go. No, it's very fucking hard. Alex Jones, he doesn't believe the earth is flat. He believes we went to the moon, and we get in arguments and debates. And he goes, Eddie, I'm going to finance a trip down to Antarctica. Let's do it. We're going to prove this once and for all. They're not eating babies in Antarctica. Like, so he was really into it. And I've looked into it so goddamn much that I know that you can't go. And if I was able just to fucking go, you're out there like a sitting duck, man. They could fucking just snipe your ass. I ain't going down to Antarctica. I don't want to go out there. I don't want to go to the jungle. I just want to go snowboarding. That's it. I'll go snowboarding. I ain't trying to go to no jungle. I ain't trying to go to no Antarctica. Fuck that shit, I know enough to go, you believe there's an ice wall? How about there's fucking endless pictures and video of the fucking ice wall? They're all over the ice wall. We're surrounded by an ice wall. And people are like, it's ridiculous. Like there's massive video and pictures of this. It's not an iceberg, dog. That shit goes on for miles and miles and miles and miles. 200-foot wall, just like Game of Thrones, dog. It's the same shit. There's mad evidence of that. So I don't want to really get into all that, but it's good to know. God damn it, it's good to know that you're not fooled by the moon landing.
It goes deep, dog.
That's nice to know, because I would be extremely disappointed if you were like, I haven't really looked in the moon. I kind of just, focus on what's going on here. I don't want to really, I don't know. That would have disappointed me, but you have done your work and you have looked into it, and I like you more now.
I just think that the thing that was the ultimate convincer for me was when just reading Dave's book showing contradictions. And then if you just think about how they portray space travel and the moon as life or death situation, think of all the movies where it's like, they're coming back, and will they get into the ozone before they run out of air, and it's so dangerous. But they're playing golf on the moon. And if you believe NASA, you have to believe they play golf on the moon, which is just ridiculous.
It's total horse shit. Now, enough about space and flat earth. I want to get back into, before we close up, the Tavistock Institute in the UK. And what can you tell the audience a little bit about the Tavistock Institute?
Right. So that started as a military connected thing to study soldiers that came back from World War I that had, they coined the term shell shock. So they started studying post-traumatic stress. That got them deeper into studying the psyche and what motivates humans. Then they got a big bunch of money from the Rockefeller Foundation to beef it up into a more serious project to study mind control. So it's basically like MK Ultra in the UK. And by the way, MK Ultra, man, I've done a whole bunch of research into that, going even deeper. It turns out that other countries were doing CIA MK Ultra stuff overseas that was easier for them to do it rather than legalities in the US. So like Australia, for example, Australia had dozens of MK Ultra programs running throughout the whole period of MK Ultra that was off the books.
Can you give a couple of examples of what
they even
did specifically?
Yeah. So part of that was Papua New Guinea off the coast. They studied, that's where they figured out that they could weaponize prions.
What's that?
So prion, that's, well, like, how that people were saying with the vaccines, the stabbies and all that they had prions, right? That's mad cow disease, basically.
Okay.
So they studied the cannibals in Papua New Guinea and the diseases that they would get: Kuru disease, mad cow disease, basically same thing. It's from eating like rotten meat and humans. You go crazy, right? And basically causes Alzheimer's. And so they discovered and isolated prions through studying those cultures. The military did as one of the adjunct programs of MK Ultra. They also used a serial killer who was doing. He's one of the most famous serial killers in Australia because he was a doctor of a sleep clinic, and he was just basically he was putting people to death through sleep. He's a famous guy. I'll have to get up all my MK Ultra notes out, but those are two examples of MK Ultra studies in Australia. But
the Tavistock Institute, getting back to that.
But Tavistock was basically doing the same stuff in the UK.
Didn't they have something to do with the Beatles and Led Zeppelin?
So John Coleman put that in his book. I'm not saying that I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what his source is on that. I mean, he could be right. I know that Tavistock studied the arts and aesthetics, and people from the Frankfurt School worked at Tavistock, like Kurt Lewin. And he's a connect between, he also worked in MK Ultra. So there's a connection between Tavistock, Frankfurt School, and MK Ultra through Kurt Lewin. And he was interested in studying the arts and weaponizing the arts. So I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a Beatles Tavistock connection, but I just don't know. I haven't verified it.
Okay. Now back to NASA again. There's one thing I forgot to ask you. And you had mentioned at the top of this podcast that you've researched Freemasonry, and you're aware that all the astronauts that faked going to the moon were Freemasons.
Yeah, they make it very obvious. They're very open about it.
Yeah. What do you think the Freemason? Why are there so many Freemasons in NASA?
It seems like working at certain levels in the government require that a lot of not everybody's in a secret society, but at certain levels that's good for it's kind of like an intelligence agency. I mean, the Freemasons, there's a really good book on this from a historian, Jessica Harlan Jacobs, and she talks about how the Freemasons were, for the British Empire, their spy network. So I'm not denying that they aren't into esoteric occult stuff, but the practical function of them for the British Empire was espionage and being a conduit for intelligence. So I think the same thing goes on at the government level. A lot of people are involved in that stuff because it's a good way to traffic in secrets. They take oaths to keep secrets. So I think it makes perfect sense that a bunch of people at NASA and a bunch of astronauts would be part of a secret society where they take oaths to lie. I mean, they have to lie. I mean, that's like part of the oath, right?
Yeah, it's like a punct that they're like an eternal punct that they're doing. They're like, there's no morals. It's all about, we got to do it for the show. We got a mission. You say whatever, the truth has nothing to do with anything. We're just trying to accomplish a mission. And like, the truth means nothing. It's just about getting things done.
There's a movie that shows that too, about the Masons. Have you ever seen The Man Who Would Be King with Michael Caine and Sean Connery?
No.
Actually, the Michael Caine's got a movie. You gotta watch it.
What is that movie about?
So they're Freemasons in the movie, and they go and they try to find a tribe out in the middle of nowhere to dupe them into believing that they're divine. And so they're basically hoodwinking. They're doing what you said to like this. Anyway, the tribe ends up, I don't want to spoil it, but the tribe ends up catching on to their scam.
No.
But I won't tell you what happens.
It's kind of like, I want to see that. What's it called again?
It's a famous Masonic movie. It's a Rudyard Kipling story, and he was a famous
What
British
year did
Freemason.
that come out? Do you remember?
It's probably a late 60s, 69.
Oh, it's old. Okay, what's it called?
Michael Caine and Sean Connery. It's called The Man Who Would Be King. You got to watch that.
The Man Who Would Be King.
It shows that Masons are basically committed to kind of scamming everybody and lying.
It stands the test of time because a lot of 60s movies look cheesy. Is it like Apocalypse Now stands the test of time?
It's kind of cheesy, but it makes your point. I mean,
okay. And that, remember that movie The Village by M. Night Shyamalan?
Ding Dong, yeah.
That was kind of that was some CIA right there, or mind control rather.
It's a mind control cult. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Crazy stuff, man. What's the connection between the Vatican and Freemasonry?
So I think the Vatican has at times acted or pretended to be opposed to Freemasonry, but I think that they're pretty much aligned. I mean, the Freemasonry pretty much champions the last several popes for the last 50 or 60 years. Like various important lodges will say they're happy with the election of John the 23rd. We're happy with the election of Pope Francis. So I think they're all pretty much on the same page now.
What do you think of the conspiracy theory that the Vatican created the Jesuit order to infiltrate Freemasonry and take it over? And
when they banned the Jesuits, that's when the Illuminati came out. It's just they're all part.
I mean, the Jesuits did have their own esoteric origins. Ignatius Loyola was part of a group called the Illuminados in Spain, which means Illuminati. So his origins, he comes out of a secret society background. And then the Jesuits did have an intention at various times to infiltrate any type of group. So that would probably include opposition like Freemasons. So I think there's probably some truth to that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as rock stars of today, we were talking about the 60s and stuff. Rock stars of today, like I did a podcast last week about Kiss, like my whole Kiss story. I was like in the Kiss cult. I was balls deep into Kiss. I still love Kiss, and there was a lot of love in that podcast. But I also talked about, being aware now that like, damn, I was like brainwashed into liking a lot of their music. The stuff, they had a lot of bad albums, and I was like, I have to like them because, I just saw the good in everything. And now looking back and I look back at Kiss and I thought, man, if they weren't some kind of deep state Illuminati rock star operation, they should have been, because if you think about it, the four members that were each rocks, it wasn't like a regular band where you had the singer like Queen, you had Freddie Mercury, and like no one really knew who the drummer was that much, and Brian May, the guitar player, he was kind of known, but the bass player's not really that popular or that famous. Like that's how most bands are. But Kiss, they were four rock stars put together, and each of their personas, and they had makeup and all that shit. One was a demon dragon. He looked pretty damn satanic, spit blood, breathe fire. He, if this was like an Illuminati dream band, it's perfect because you had a demon, you had a spaceman, got all about space. That's perfect. Satan, space, like, dude, perfect. And then Paul Stanley, which, he was very flamboyant on stage, which was very common back in the 70s, but looking back, all the ones that were flamboyant, they were, so it was like, as far as the deep state Illuminati dream band, boom, you get a guy who's, very feminine on stage, even though he sang about girls, but still he was very feminine, and, and that's huge these days. And then the fourth guy, he was the cat. And, I kind of did mental gymnastics to try to piece that together to like, man, this is like the perfect Illuminati band. It's a deep state dream. But the cat, when you look into it, ancient Babylonians, and according to what I saw on the internet, ancient Babylonians and ancient Egyptians, like the pharaohs, they worshipped cats. I don't know if that's exaggerated or not, but it says that they worship cats. So I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So then that would make sense. You look at this, the Sphinx. Isn't the Sphinx a gigantic lion or something like that, or a tiger or something? So if you look at Kiss in that light, man, that's a Illuminati dream right there, that band. And they're just singing about banging chicks and just having fun and not giving don't listen to anybody, But my question is, what modern day rock stars, if you had a gun to your head that you had which ones for sure do you think are conscious of being part of some kind of deep state Illuminati program? Which ones are like for sure? Like, would you say for sure Lady Gaga? Like for sure?
Oh yeah, Lady Gaga. Real quick, Gaga is the name for Pluto, and Pluto was known as the messenger of Saturn, which is going back to the black cube of Saturn. So she says she got from Radio Gaga, but Gaga literally is the messenger of the black cube of Saturn.
Jay, what do you think? If you had to pick a couple out, I know you don't want to get sued for defamation.
Without a question, Madonna and Beyonce.
Hell
sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they're not part of whatever you want to call it, Illuminati, deep state, like that eyes wide shut level. If they're not involved, then no one is. Then all rock are organic. Exactly. You know what I mean? And I mean, I would throw Lady Gaga in there. She's a disciple of Marina Abramovic.
Right. Exactly.
What? Marina Abramovic, for those of you that don't know, look into her. She's the celebrity to the celebrities. She's like some satanic fucking witch.
She's a witch, yeah.
Yeah. And she's all like, remember just like last year, Google, I think it was Google or Microsoft.
Yeah, I made a video about that.
Had a commercial with Marina Abramovic.
And it bombed too.
Paint her out as like some abstract artist, or you know what I mean? And then they pulled that in less than a day. They pulled it with the backlash. That's kind of that makes me feel like there's some hope. You know what I mean? That shit, they try to shove that down our fucking throats. Microsoft with Marina Abramovic, and then they pulled it from pressure.
I believe that art of the future is art without objects. It's just pure transmission of energy between the viewer and the artist. To me, mixed reality is this answer.
This was a unique opportunity to take the most legendary artists working now and capture them in such a way that they are translatable forever.
If you're a collector, you're trying to find works that break new ground. We here at Christie's believe that this is that. And it will be the first time that a mixed reality artwork is sold at auction.
There was always a question what you buy when you buy performance. You buy the video or you buy the additional photographs. Here, you actually can have the artist's presence in your collection.
The first thing that we had to figure out was you had to feel that you were in the room with Marina, not a document of Marina. So HoloLens 2 was created by people who quite clearly have an interest in the audience forgetting that they are using technology. So the purest expression of artistic intent can happen.
I really want viewer to be with me in the space in here and now. The life is dealing with what is going to stay after I'm not there anymore. And I can face myself. And that's a frightening experience. Really like you're facing your own ghost. There is always this great idea of immortality. Once you die, the work will never die because the work of art can continue. In performance, the piece is only in the memory of the audience and nowhere else. Here, I am kept forever.
And there's like, damn, there's hope in this world, So when shit like that happens.
100%, dude. If you take a look at rap, man, and hip hop, dude, look what they did with that. I mean, like, you only got pushed forward if you played a certain stereotype image. I mean, the hip hop was, we talk about heavy metal and hair metal being pushed out for grunge. I mean, hip hop, you had all this positive hip hop going on, and they couldn't get radio play for this gangster shit. And like, the more gangster or degrading your character is, the more you get pushed. Da baby, a grown man walking around with diapers on. Come on, man. That's all it is. And now you got like Bad Bunny, who's like just basically a cross-dresser. I mean, like, dude, all this shit gets, you got to be plug and play stereotypes to get super promoted in Hollywood. I mean, even actors, I tell people, you want to be, you really want to work in Hollywood, be a stereotype. Stereotypes, sassy black chick, dickhead jock guy. It's all plug and play, plug and play, plug and play. Even in stand-up, it's all cookie cutter shit. Right. Everything is like plug and play, plug and play, plug. Are you pushing a narrative that they want out? Are you pushing a narrative that you want out? And it's all that stuff.
Yeah, do you see that? You brought up Madonna, that one video from like a month ago where it looked like, I don't know, maybe she was just really stoned or drunk or something, but she put a video out on Instagram, and I don't know. What do you think of that video? You know what I'm talking about? Can you find that?
Yeah,
real
where
quick?
she like kisses the camera.
Like, what the hell was that?
Cat lady.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Maybe that's your cat thing. Maybe aliens are really cats and it's a war against dogs.
Hey, you know what? Dogs are all about love. That's the number one thing on the menu with dogs. They don't care how long you've been gone. When you get home, they unconditional love. Dogs are unconditional love. And what's dog spell backwards?
God.
Maybe dogs are here to remind us of the frequency we're supposed to be on, the dog frequency, the God frequency.
And what is cat backwards?
Unconditional love. Dogs are all about unconditional love.
Cat backward is tack, which is total alien control. Think about that, dude.
Was that? Okay, check out this Madonna video.
Yeah.
Madonna's bizarre behavior in a new TikTok video has left fans asking if she's okay. Madonna posted a clip just before the 2022 Grammy Awards on Sunday showing the Material Girl musician wearing heavy silver chains and a black sheer top with her blonde hair and her pouting face.
I'm feeling is.
He looks like a
Staring into the
Bogdanov.
camera with full cheeks and a wrinkle-free forehead, Madge moved closer and closer to the lens before turning her plump lips into a pout. She recently shocked fans again by looking decades younger in her new Frozen music video remix.
Madonna's trying to fucking run from the devil, dude. The devil collects, bro. The devil collects.
Dude,
you know how her skin looks like that?
Cover right there. The devil collects. The devil collects should be the name of your new comedy special.
The devil collects.
That was beautiful. Jay, you were saying something? I interrupted.
We had dinner one night with the guy that used to be her security dude, and he was telling us, explaining what's up with her. He was just saying all these crazy things, these crazy stories. But he said that the reason that her skin looks like that, because she's like a grandma age, right? She's like 70 something, right?
Yeah.
But the reason that her skin looks like that, he said that she has this mask that she wears, and she won't let anybody film her or take pictures unless she wears this really high priced mask that like pulls her face back.
That's a mask that's on her real face?
Right. According to her former security dude.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't think so? Is it a clone?
Gun to my head, I would say she is a customer at Ambrosia, that one company that they transfuse old people with. They say teen blood.
Right.
They say teen blood.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that your blood has to be 18 or over? You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's illegal. So that's already out in the open. Can you find Ambrosia?
That's some children of the corn shit.
Yeah, they're already normalizing teen blood, right? So basically, they're saying if you're old and you're fucked up, if you get a blood transfusion with teen blood, that it gives you like miraculous health benefits. And,
right. Yeah.
And if they're saying that, then are their customers asking for younger blood? And is it the younger the better, or is
probably
teen the best? You know what I mean? They're making people think like, oh shit, young blood is good. So they get people into teen blood, and then boom, you know what? 10-year-olds' bloods are a little better. 10-year-old, it's not teen technically, but 10 is better. And people are like, fuck it, I've been doing 16-year-old blood, for a while now. I'll go down to 10-year-old, and then boom, then they accept the ultimate. You know what I mean? Which is Adrenochrome. That's. I know that's a conspiracy theory, but
what's so interesting is that everybody's like, there's this guy that won Duncan Trussell's whole thing, and that he was basically saying that fucking Adrenochrome is a psyop and stuff like that. And it's just like, maybe, dude, maybe, but like all these, like over the last 7 years, what is the conspiracy theorist got completely wrong? What is their batting average? And if you're sitting there telling me that like Q's all garbage, and I get it. There's a lot of people hate Q, but what's your take on January 6th What's your take on Russian collusion? What's your take on the virus? Because everything that's come out is basically confirmed what the conspiracy theorists have been saying. Totally. And I'm sure there's some controlled opposition out there. And I'm pretty sure there's misinformation agents out there. But based on like the community, we've been more right than we've been wrong. So if there's a big movement saying this is something that they do, right, then why would you sit there and just demonize it because it just doesn't fit your man? The problem with the left is that they're goldfish and they don't remember all the L's they've been taking since like the Bernie Sanders got clipped by Hillary for the DNC primary. Yeah. Loss at the loss at the loss at the loss because the internet knows everything. And it's just super interesting.
Well, remember that. So if you talked about blood drinking, right? Oh, that's crazy. It doesn't exist. Well, then Megan Fox comes out and says, well, yeah, it exists, but it's just a little bit. Well, I thought it didn't exist.
Check this out. Here's the Ambrosia.
The aging process simply by getting a blood transfusion.
That's what a new company called Ambrosia claims to do, and they just opened a new facility right here in the Houston area.
Rekha Mudaraj spoke to the founder to find out how young blood works.
It's a controversial startup. Ambrosia is the brainchild of Dr. Jesse Karmazin, and right now there are 5 clinics located across the U.S. Karmazin says 150 people have already gone through the process, and several of them have even done it a second time.
My name is Jesse Karmazin, and as you heard, I'm the founder of Ambrosia, and we're a company interested in making you young again.
Dr.
Okay,
Jesse
look at all
Karmazin
those weird triangles behind him, huh?
Blood, young blood, preferably that of a person under the age of 25.
We know that as you get older, your stem cells aren't replicating as well as when you were young. And this leads to most illnesses.
He explained the science behind it during the Superhuman Summit in 2017.
And when they were sewn together, he found that the old mouse, which received the blood of the young mouse, became young again. So its gray hair turned black. It could remember mazes better. Its heart pumped better. In fact, in every way, it became young again.
If vampires are the first thing that comes to mind, Karmazin, in a phone interview with us, explained the process doesn't involve blood in its entirety, but plasma, the white translucent component that remains after white and red blood cells and platelets are removed. The results?
Their wrinkles are better. Their skin has a better color to it. And furthermore,
this guy is the calm of a serial killer, right?
Patients with symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, diabetes.
And by measuring biomarkers, he told me people have also shown improvements in cholesterol levels and inflammation. There is no published data to prove these claims, although Karmazin says scientific evidence from his clinical trials will soon be available. In the meantime, people continue to sign up for treatments on the company's website, which cost $8,000 for a liter of plasma, $12,000 for 2 liters. Just another sign that the promise of youth is a booming business. The company wouldn't tell us the exact location of its Houston clinic, except to say it's located near Houston Methodist Willowbrook Hospital. What are the risks, and how is the company able to get FDA approval? We'll have those answers. Plus, doctors weigh in on the process.
Yeah,
Crazy
nothing shady
shit.
about that. Where are you located? Well, we can't really tell you right now.
Hey guys, hey, we gotta wrap it up. Hey Jay, we're gonna do this again. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah,
we
dude,
can
it
go
was
on
a
forever, man, because I got all this shit written down. We're already at that 2-hour mark. We're gonna do Jay Dyer part 2, part 3, part 10. Sam Tripoli, you're gonna be on this all the goddamn time. Thank you. Any last final plugs you want to give, Jay Dyer? How can we find you?
Yeah, like you, I'm on Rokfin as well, so you can find my stuff there. I have a website, jaysanalysis.com, that sort of archives everything. Got a subscription service there too. I host the 4th Hour of Alex Jones every Friday, so you can check me out there over on Alex's stuff, Infowars and Band.video, YouTube channel, Jay Dyer. That's it.
Awesome, Jay. And Sam, any plugs you want to plug our Florida dates?
Yeah, man, we're going to be in Florida. What are the dates on that, Hetty?
June 19th and Tallahassee and Jacksonville. Just go to samtripoli.com.
Go to samtripoli.com for everything, dude. You know, I got a lot of great stuff going on, and like I got this Telegram that's killing it, but I know it's just a matter of time before they come for me. So if you go to samtripoli.com, there's a ton of places for everybody to talk. But it's June 17th and June 18th. Just go to samtripoli.com. All things Sam Tripoli there.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
I love you, dude.
And I appreciate your work. You guys are doing awesome work. And I love you, Sam. Love you, Jay. See
It'd
you
be
guys
great
next
if
time.
Hibbler talked a little less. I mean, he's constantly talking.
He doesn't have a mic. He forgot his mic. He'll have a mic next time.
Well, it was great. Always a pleasure chopping up with both of you guys.
All right,
Hibbler, I
man.
love you.
Love you guys.
Thank you guys so
See
much.
Bye.
Have a good night.
The Jiu-Jitsu Dojo is the ultimate training ground for life. Jiu-Jitsu will accelerate the evolution of your being, your consciousness, your soul. Through this amazing art, you will prove to yourself that you can master anything you set your mind to.
Happy birthday, Eddie Bravo.
I leave for Brazil tomorrow.
Are you the Fear Factor guy?
I'm like 6 pounds over. Time to sweat it out.
Just imagine someone that has no idea how different your game is.
I'll tell you what this weekend was, man. It was a culmination point where all your hard work comes to like one great moment in time. You showed that you're a fucking champion, guy who goes against convention. You created your own shit and figured interesting ways to get around problems in jiu-jitsu. And shows you that great things are possible if you work hard, if you dedicate yourself, and you use your creativity, and you push through. Your own human potential just goes up.
My 10th Planet Association has grown rapidly to over 70 academies worldwide, and their curriculums are all synced to 10th Planet headquarters located in downtown Los Angeles. I'm Eddie Bravo. I hope to see you on the mats.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake.